It started with a noise, a soft, rhythmic scraping from the basement around 20:17 a.m. I thought maybe it was the furnace again or rats, but the sound didn't stop. I crept downstairs in my socks, every step echoing through the silent house, and when I opened the basement door, I froze. There she was, Emily, my wife of 7 years, standing barefoot in the center of the concrete floor, in her nightgown, shovel in hand, digging. Her eyes were open but glassy, and dirt piled beside her feet. Her movements were robotic. "Emily," I whispered, but she didn't answer. I stepped closer, heart racing, and when I reached out and touched her shoulder, she paused, then turned and looked at me. "You're not supposed to be awake," she said, her voice flat and unfamiliar. Then, as if nothing had happened, she returned to digging. The next morning, she acted normal. Pancakes, coffee, a kiss on the cheek. But when I asked how she slept, she said, "Like a rock." And I didn't mention the digging, convinced I must have dreamt it. That night, however, I checked the basement, and the hole was real. Dead center of the floor, maybe 3 feet deep, almost perfectly round, with a clean shovel leaning against the wall. I reached down into the hole and felt the loose, fresh dirt. "Looking for something?" she asked behind me, making me jump as she stood at the top of the stairs, smiling. Something about her eyes twisted my stomach. I couldn't sleep. I stammered, and she nodded, saying, "That happens. Don't stay up too late," before turning and walking away, her shadow stretching long across the steps, and then I noticed that her feet were covered in dirt. This time, I stayed awake and waited in the dark, silent as the grave, and at exactly 2:17 a.m., Emily sat up in bed with her eyes open and no emotion, walking slowly, barefoot toward the basement, and I followed, unseen. She didn't notice me. Taking the shovel, she positioned herself in the same spot and resumed digging, one scoop at a time, her pace steady as the hole deepened to maybe 5 feet. I whispered her name, but she didn't react, so I tried again, louder, and she stopped, then, without turning, said, "It's not deep enough yet. I can still hear them," sending chills running through me. "Hear who?" I asked, but she didn't reply, merely resumed digging. This time faster, dirt scattering across the floor and her breathing quickening. I backed away, bumping into the shelf, and when a glass jar fell and shattered, she didn't flinch, but as I turned to leave, I heard whispering from the hole. The whispers weren't clear, just low, urgent tones rising from the darkness, and I strained to hear heart hammering. Words, breaths, laughter. Whatever it was, Emily seemed entranced by it, digging like she was obeying. The next morning, she had no memory again, and when I asked how she was, she smiled and said, "Feeling better." While she showered, I went to the basement, finding the hole had grown wider, nearly 6 feet long, like a shallow grave. Leaning over, I felt the warmth of the dirt and saw something at the bottom. Pale, smooth bone. I grabbed a flashlight and, as I crouched to get a better look, turned when I heard a noise behind me. "Emily." "You shouldn't look," she said, her eyes glassy again, clearly sleepwalking in the daytime. Reaching toward me, her hands were shaking as she whispered, "You'll wake them." Before collapsing, I called her name, but there was nothing, and in the silence, I heard the whispers again. This time saying my name, I brought her to a therapist, thinking she was stressed, describing the sleepwalking, the digging, the strange speech, but the therapist suggested it might be a trauma response or parasomnia. "What about the voices?" I asked, She raised an eyebrow, saying, "Voices." And I hesitated, not wanting to sound crazy. Afterward, Emily declared she felt fine and teased, "I think you're the one having nightmares." While that night, I installed a camera in the basement, motion activated, because I couldn't sleep. Around 20:30 a.m., the alert pinged, and I rushed to watch the footage, seeing Emily standing in the hole, staring down, motionless, before she slowly crouched, whispering to the dirt, and then something whispered back. Not in her voice, not human. I paused the video as her hand reached down into the soil, and something reached up. But then, the screen glitched, and the file deleted itself. I replaced the camera, wiring it this time for no Wi-Fi interference or deletion risk, and the next night waited upstairs, pretending to sleep. Between 17 a.m., a thud. I rushed to the monitor, seeing Emily wasn't digging but kneeling inside the hole, her hands pressed into the dirt like she was praying, moving her mouth in silent conversation. Then she looked straight at the camera. Not a glance, but a full minute of expressionless staring, followed by a smile. The screen flickered, the lights dimmed, and my phone rang from an unknown number. When I answered, a voice, deep and distant, whispered, "One more night." Before the call ended, I ran to the basement to find Emily gone, the hole deeper, and tiny handprints all over the walls, along with scratches that hadn't been there before. Emily started mumbling in her sleep strings of names that I wrote down. Dozens of them, all unfamiliar. When I Googled them, every single one was listed as missing. Most from our state, some children, some decades old. I showed her the list at breakfast and asked, "Do any of these sound familiar?" She glanced at them and said, "Those are dreams. I've seen them before, in the dirt." I froze, asking, "What?" And she blinked before replying, "What? You said you saw them in the dirt." But she denied having said anything. That night I brought a ladder down into the hole, now 10 feet deep, where the dirt felt damp and cold, and I dug with my hands until I uncovered something hard. A skull, tiny, child-sized. I scrambled out, panic rising, only to find Emily standing above me, holding the shovel, whispering, "You shouldn't take what isn't yours." And then she smiled. I tried to report it to the police, but when they came, the basement was clean. No hole, no dirt, no shovel. The concrete smooth and untouched. Emily standing behind me, sipping tea. Polite as ever, giggling. He has such vivid dreams. And they left unconvinced. That night, I lifted the floorboards in the basement, only to find scratches and symbols carved into the cement beneath them. And when I followed them, I found a small shrine in the far corner. Bones arranged in a circle, a doll's head with blackened eyes in the center. Emily stood silently at the door and said, "You shouldn't go where they sleep," prompting me to ask, "Who are they?" To which she tilted her head, replying, "The ones who came first," and then walked away humming a lullaby she'd never sung before. The bones whispered, wanting another name. I knew the woman I had married was gone. Emily's eyes felt colder now, her smile practiced, like she was mimicking something human. I pretended to sleep again, watching as she rose at 2:17, gliding downstairs like a puppet on strings, and I followed her to the shrine, where she spoke in English, saying, "He suspects. Not yet. Just a few more." She wasn't alone. Several things whispered back, prompting her to turn and say, "You should have stayed asleep." Before I ran, locked the door, and pushed furniture in front, noticing a mirror where Emily stood in it. But she wasn't in the room. Her reflection moved independently, the eyes that stared back not her own but black. I packed a bag, ready to run, yet something told me I wouldn't get far. The whispers began coming from the vents, the mirrors, even the TV when it was off. At dinner, Emily served stew, saying she made my favorite with gleaming eyes. I didn't eat. Later, I found a human tooth in the trash and stormed into the basement, where the hole had returned, fresh and deeper. With something moving at the bottom, not Emily, not human, a shape with no face, only hands, dozens of them reaching. Emily stood behind me, gently saying, "They want you to stay," before turning to kiss my forehead, whispering, "It's your turn now." I had stopped sleeping, the whispers now incessant, with pale, eyeless children watching me from the corners of my vision. Emily openly talking and laughing with them. And last night, she claimed, "They chose you. You should be honored." I screamed at her, demanding answers, but she held my face softly, whispering, "You'll be part of something eternal." That night, I felt something crawl under my skin, as it hadn't been a dream. I bled from my fingernails, my eyes burned, and I coughed up dirt. They were getting inside me. I now saw what Emily saw. The other side, where the hole is not a grave but a door that is opening. Tonight is the last night. Emily's voice is now layered. Hers and others speaking through her, as she led me down to the basement without force or struggle, to the complete shrine, where the names are carved into the walls, and mine is the last one. She kissed me once and whispered, "You'll understand soon," before pushing me into the hole. I fell but didn't land, kept falling, and the voices welcomed me, showing me everything. The world beneath, older than bones, deeper than nightmares. I see now, Emily didn't change, she was chosen, and now, so am I. If you're reading this, don't wake her. Let her finish digging or the door will never close.